She slid the note across the bar without making eye contact. Folded once, no name on it. Just 4 words written in blue pen. Your wife was here. I still had my jacket on. I'd walked in 30 seconds ago. I remember staring at that piece of paper the way you stare at a car accident on the highway. You don't want to look, but your body has already decided for you. The bartender, a woman maybe 60 years old with reading glasses pushed up on her forehead, just nodded once and moved down the bar to pour someone else's drink. Like she'd done her part, like the rest was mine to carry. My name is Mason Cole. And up until that Thursday night in October, I thought I knew exactly what kind of life I was living. My wife and I had been together for 9 years. Married for 6. We met in our mid-20s at a friend's birthday party in Denver. The kind of party where you end up on the back porch talking until 2 a.m. Because the conversation is just that easy. She was funny and direct, and she laughed at the same things I did. We moved in together after 8 months. We got a dog. We bought a house in a quiet neighborhood with good schools, even though we didn't have kids yet. We were building towards something. That's what I believed. I work in civil engineering, bridge infrastructure, mostly federal contracts. It's not glamorous, but it's steady and I'm good at it. She worked as a senior account manager for a regional logistics firm, traveled maybe once a month for client meetings. Or so I thought. I'd gone to that bar, a place called Harlow's on the corner of 5th and Clement, to meet a coworker for a drink after a late site review. He canceled 20 minutes before I got there. I almost turned around. Almost. I unfolded the note again. Your wife was here. Present tense, past tense, the grammar didn't matter. What mattered was the bartender knew my wife. Knew her well enough to write that note. Knew me well enough to recognize I was her husband the second I walked through the door. I flagged her back down. She hesitated, then came over. Her name tag said Gloria. I asked her calmly as I could manage with my pulse doing things it had no business doing, how she knew. She told me my wife had been coming in for about 4 months. Always on Tuesday nights. Always with the same man. Always in the corner booth by the window. She said she recognized me from a photo my wife kept in her wallet. The kind of photo that makes you feel something when you see it and then feel something completely different when the context changes around it. I sat there for a moment. I didn't order a drink. I thanked Gloria. I left a 20 on the bar and I walked back out into the cold air, and I sat in my truck for 11 minutes doing absolutely nothing. Hi. My name is Mason Cole. And I had just learned that the Tuesday nights my wife spent at her book club were not spent at any book club I had ever seen a book come out of. I want to be honest about what those 11 minutes felt like. Not the movie version where the guy punches the steering wheel or calls someone immediately. It was quieter than that. It was the specific kind of quiet that shows up when something you built your whole adult life around starts to make a different kind of sense. Like a picture you've been looking at for years and suddenly you tilt your head and you see the other image hidden inside it. I drove home. She was already there, on the couch, watching something on her laptop with headphones on. She pulled one ear off and smiled at me. How was the site review? Long, I said. But good. She nodded, put the headphone back and returned to her screen. I went upstairs, changed my clothes, and lay on top of the covers staring at the ceiling for a long time. Not raging. Not crying. Just recalibrating. Because I had learned something in that bar that was going to require a very different version of me to handle correctly. My name is Mason Cole. I have a master's degree in structural engineering. My entire career is built on one principle. You do not make decisions about load-bearing systems based on assumptions. You measure. You test. You verify. You build the case before you build the bridge. I applied that principle to the next 3 weeks of my life. I started small. I checked our shared calendar on the cloud, the one we'd set up together years ago to coordinate schedules. I could see she had C, blocked off every Tuesday evening. Book club, 7 entries in the past 2 months. I cross-referenced with our joint credit card statements. On 6 of those Tuesday nights, there were no charges anywhere near the library or the coffee shop where she claimed the group met. On 3 of them, there were charges at restaurants I didn't recognize, in a part of the city we almost never went to together. I didn't say a word. I have a friend named Derek who does IT security consulting. We played baseball together in college and have stayed close. I called him on a Friday afternoon, told him I needed a personal favor, and explained what I needed without explaining why. He understood without asking. 2 days later, I had a secondary view into our shared iCloud backup. What I found in the deleted messages folder took the air out of the room. 4 months of texts. His name in her phone was listed as Danielle W., a college friend she mentioned occasionally, someone I'd never met, someone whose name I'd never thought to question. I read through enough to understand the shape of it. Not obsessively, not every word. just enough to confirm what Gloria's note had already told me. But then I found something that shifted the entire equation. His real name was Trevor Holt. And once I had that, I started looking. Trevor Holt, 41 years old, worked in commercial real estate development. LinkedIn profile, polished, headshot professional, the kind of page that says, I close deals. But Derek ran a deeper search as a follow-up favor, the kind that pulls from court records and public filings, and what came back changed everything I thought this was. 2 years ago, in Phoenix, a woman had filed a civil complaint against a man matching his description and legal name. The complaint alleged financial manipulation, specifically that he had convinced a woman he was in a relationship with to co-sign a business loan under false pretenses. The case was settled privately. The terms were sealed. But the filing was public. The name was public. The pattern was public. I sat with that for a long time. My name is Mason Cole. And I stopped thinking about this as a story about betrayal. I started thinking about it as a story about exposure. The first call I made was to a family law attorney named Patricia Huang, recommended by my older brother who had gone through a divorce 3 years prior. I gave her a summary of what I had. She told me to document everything, touch nothing jointly, and come see her the following Monday. The second call I made was to our financial advisor. I asked him one specific question. If funds were being redirected out of a joint account incrementally, at what point would that become legally significant? His answer was immediate. He said he'd take a look at the past 18 months of activity, unprompted, and call me back. He called back the next morning. She had been transferring small amounts, never more than $400 at a time, into an account he didn't have visibility on. Over 14 months, it totaled just under $11,000. $11,000 she'd been quietly moving while we split grocery bills and talked about refinancing the mortgage. I remember thinking, in that moment, that the money itself almost didn't matter. What mattered was the deliberateness of it. $400 at a time is not carelessness. That's a decision, made repeatedly, in a life that looked completely normal from the outside. My name is Mason Cole. And I had just found the second bridge. I didn't flinch. I didn't confront her. I went to dinner that Saturday night with her and her parents, smiled at the right moments, helped her dad with a stuck window frame in the kitchen, and drove us home while she talked about a coworker drama I no longer had any emotional investment in. Patricia and I moved quickly after that. Asset documentation, pre-filing strategy, custody pre-consultation, even though we didn't have children because she owned half of a rental property with her sister and the structure of that mattered. I signed a protective document on the house through a title clause I'd honestly forgotten about, one my father had insisted on when he helped us with the down payment. She had no access to it independently. She didn't know the walls had already been reinforced. What I planned next was not revenge. I want to be precise about that. I'm an engineer. I don't build things to destroy them. What I planned was a controlled demolition. I sent 2 text messages on a Wednesday afternoon. The first to my wife, I'm booking a room at the Alderton Hotel Friday evening. Client dinner fell through and I thought we could use a night away. Just the 2 of us. 7 p.m.? She replied within 4 minutes. That sounds perfect. I'll pack a bag. The second message went to Trevor Holt. I sent it from a secondary email address through a forwarding service Derek had set up. It read, Mr. Holt, I represent a development group currently evaluating commercial parcels in your region. We've reviewed your firm's portfolio and would like to schedule a preliminary conversation this Friday evening. We prefer a neutral meeting space. Would the Alderton Hotel, 7 p.m., work for you? His reply came in under 2 hours. That works. See you then. Neither of them knew the other had been invited. I arrived at 6:45. I had reserved a small private dining area off the main lobby, the kind of space boutique hotels keep for corporate events and quiet negotiations. Clean, neutral, 2 chairs across from a single one. I placed a folder on the table. Inside, bank statements, a printout of the Phoenix civil filing, screenshots of text logs with timestamps, a summary document Patricia had helped me prepare, and a photo, not one I took, one pulled from the phone backup. Time-stamped. Geotagged. She walked in first, glowing, wearing a dress I hadn't seen before. She stopped when she saw the room. She stopped again when she saw the folder. The color left her face in stages, like a tide going out. He came in 30 seconds later, still in his work blazer. Already smiling the way men smile when they think they're walking into an opportunity. The smile left the moment he saw me. I stood. Sit down, I said. Not loud. Not aggressive. The same tone I use on a job site when I need people to hear me over the noise. They sat. My name is Mason Cole. And I did not yell. I did not break anything. I did not perform. I slid the folder forward. She looked at it but didn't open it. He looked at me. You need to understand something, he said, leaning forward slightly with the particular confidence of a man who has navigated rooms like this before. Whatever you think is happening here, I don't think anything, I said. I know. And so does my attorney, and so does the IRS. As of this morning, because financial redirection from a joint marital account into a business entity tied to your initials is a reportable event. He leaned back. She made a sound that wasn't quite a word. I looked at her then. Not with anger. With something colder and more final. I'm not here for an explanation, I said. I've read the explanations. I don't need to hear them out loud. Mason. The house is frozen. The joint accounts are under review. A separation filing was submitted this morning. I picked up the folder. And there's something in here that's going to matter to you more than either of those things. I slid the Phoenix filing across to him. He looked at it. His jaw shifted. That's sealed, he said quietly. The settlement is sealed, I said. The filing isn't. Public record. My attorney has already forwarded it to your firm's general counsel, along with a summary of how that pattern appears to be repeating in the current jurisdiction. He stood up. This isn't over, he said. I know, I replied. That's why I have a lawyer. He left. She stayed. She didn't say anything for a long time. She sat with her hands folded on the table and stared at the wood grain like it contained some answers she was looking for. How long have you known? She finally asked. Long enough, I said. I didn't mean for it to. I know you didn't mean for it to happen the way it did, I said. Most people don't mean for things. That doesn't change what they are. She looked up at me. Her eyes were red. Is there anything I can say? I thought about it honestly. I gave her the honest answer. Not tonight, I said. And I left. My name is Mason Cole. Walking out of that room was the loneliest I have ever felt and also, somehow, the most clear. My brother called that night when I got home. He didn't ask many questions. He just stayed on the line while I sat in the dark in the living room, the dog at my feet, the house quiet in a way it hadn't been in months. He said one thing that stuck. He said, "You're not starting over. You're starting from what's actually real." I didn't have a response for that. I just held on to it. The professional piece unfolded on its own. Her company had a travel and expense policy, detailed and enforced, particularly around client-facing events. I didn't go hunting for violations. But when Patricia requested financial records as part of the asset division process, what came back included 3 charges on her corporate card for hotel stays listed under regional client engagement. Dates I now recognized. Locations I now recognized. One overlapping with a work trip I remembered her taking, one of the ones I drove her to the airport for. Patricia reviewed them. She said the decision about what to do with that information was mine. I thought about it for 2 days. I thought about the difference between accountability and cruelty. I thought about what I was actually trying to protect. Not my pride. Not my anger. Something more basic, the idea that what happened should be real. That it shouldn't get smoothed over and buried and reframed into something softer than what it was. I forwarded the relevant expense records to her company's compliance department with a single note. These charges appear inconsistent with stated business purpose. I am providing this as a courtesy disclosure during an ongoing legal matter. No commentary. No elaboration. She was placed on administrative leave within a week. Investigation pending? She called me from her sister's house. The call was long and hard to listen to, not because she was cruel, she wasn't, but because I could hear the specific sound of someone trying to find solid ground and realizing they'd removed it themselves, piece by piece. For months. You didn't have to do that, she said. I know, I said. So why did you? I thought about how to answer that honestly. Because pretending it didn't happen is its own kind of lie, I said. And I've had enough of those. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said something that surprised me. I think I knew you'd find out eventually. I think part of me wanted you to. I didn't know what to do with that. I still don't. Entirely. But I wrote it down because it felt like the most honest thing she'd said to me in a long time, and I wasn't going to dismiss it. The Trevor situation resolved itself in the way that kind of situation usually does when the man at the center of it realizes the walls are closing. His firm quietly parted ways with him within 30 days of my attorney's communication with their general counsel. The Phoenix filing, once surfaced and attached to his current conduct, created liability his employers weren't willing to hold. He didn't reach out again after the hotel. Not once. Rachel, my sister-in-law, my brother's wife, a paralegal who has strong opinions and zero patience for ambiguity, texted me the morning after everything went quiet. Derek told me what happened. I just want you to know I'm proud of how you handled it. That couldn't have been easy. I read that text sitting in my truck in the parking lot outside my office, and I sat with it for a minute before I went in. It wasn't easy. I want to say that clearly because I think there's a version of this story that makes it sound clean and surgical and emotionally efficient. And it wasn't. There were nights where I lay awake running the same memories through my head on a loop, trying to identify the moment when things shifted, trying to find the specific crack in the foundation that I had missed or ignored or paved over. I didn't always find it. Sometimes the answer is just that. Two people grow in different directions and one of them chooses silence instead of honesty, and the silence becomes a door, and someone eventually walks through it. I'm not blameless in the distance that grew between us. I know that. I worked long hours. I was in my head a lot. I prioritized stability over presence more times than I should have. I'm not reciting that as an excuse for what she did. I'm reciting it because I'm 32 years old and I would rather leave this situation understanding it than just surviving it. The divorce was finalized on a gray Tuesday morning, the kind of morning that doesn't have any weather, just light. Patricia called me afterward and told me it was done. I thanked her, told her to send her final invoice to my personal email, and then I drove to a park near my house and walked the trail around the lake for an hour with the dog. His name is Huck. He has no idea any of this happened. He just ran alongside me like it was any other morning, which was, genuinely, the most comforting thing in my life for several months. 3 weeks after the divorce was finalized, she asked if we could meet. She suggested a coffee shop, a different one from any we'd gone to together, somewhere neutral. I agreed. She looked different. Not worse, not better. Stripped down in some way. She wasn't wearing the perfume she'd switched to sometime last year, the one I'd noticed without saying anything. She was wearing the one she'd always worn, the one from before. I don't know if she did that intentionally. I didn't ask. We sat across from each other over coffee. We both let go cold. I've been seeing a therapist, she said. She's been helping me understand some things about why I made the choices I did. I nodded. I don't need you to absolve me, she said. I just wanted you to know that I understand what I did. Not just the practical damage. The other part. I looked at her. I believed her. I spent a long time, she said, looking down at her cup, telling myself that what I was doing was because something was missing. That it was your fault or the marriage's fault or just bad timing or bad luck. But that was easier than admitting that I made a choice. Every week. For 4 months. I made the same choice over and over and then told myself it wasn't really a choice. I didn't say anything. I'm sorry, she said. Not because I got caught. I'm sorry because you deserve better than what I gave you. I looked out the window for a moment at the street, at the ordinary Tuesday afternoon happening outside, at the people walking past with their coffee and their dogs and their ordinary problems that weren't this. Then I looked back at her. I believe you, I said. She nodded slowly. Are you going to be okay? She asked. Yeah, I said. I think I am, and I meant it. Not as a performance, not as a parting shot designed to make me look steady while she struggled. I meant it because the last 4 months, as hard as they were, had taught me something I wouldn't have learned any other way. That I could handle hard things quietly. That I could measure before I acted. That I could be devastated and still be deliberate. That I could forgive without returning. I'm not going to say I'm grateful it happened. I'm not. I lost something real and I'll carry that for a long time. But I learned something about myself in that loss that I wouldn't trade. I learned that the version of me who sat in that truck for 11 minutes and didn't fall apart was someone I could build on. We finished the coffee. We said goodbye without drama, without tears, without anything that would have looked significant from the outside. Just two people who had been a large part of each other's lives agreeing that they weren't anymore. I drove home. Huck was asleep on the couch. I sat down next to him, which I'm not technically supposed to do because he's 70 pounds, and he rolled over and put his head on my leg without opening his eyes. I sat there for a long time. Here is what I know now that I didn't know a year ago. The foundation matters more than the structure above it. You can build something beautiful on top of something cracked and it will hold for years, maybe decades, before the stress points finally give. But the cracks were always there. And when the thing comes down, you have two choices. You can stand in the rubble and catalog the damage. Or you can look at the site and start thinking about what gets built next, and build it right this time, from the ground up, on something solid. I chose the second option. My name is Mason Cole. And I am just getting started.